Hi everyone, this is Rohit from Lifestyle Mastery, and today I'm excited to have Osajie Oboh, who is the founder of Cutbox, which provides high-quality, affordable haircuts through leveraging haircuts, and they call themselves the world's first tech-led barber chain. Welcome to the show, Oz.
Thanks, Rohit. Pleasure to be on here.
Awesome. So you started at Warwick, and then you built this company. How did you get into this world of startups? What got you excited to start your own thing?
Well, I'd say from a very young age, about 20, while I was studying engineering at the University of Warwick,
Right.
I was doing engineering, and I started realizing that the engineering of systems and of businesses is something that I want to do, and ultimately a business operates similar to like a machine would operate in terms of an organization. And from then, it's always been my goal to create a massive business, like $1 billion business, consumer facing, because I like that side of things. It really excites me. And I was lucky enough to be part of my first startup business while I was at uni, and that really got me to grips with the fundamentals of running something. And since then, I looked for opportunities to learn as much as I could about running businesses. So I moved abroad. I worked for a leading roller shutter and blinds company in Central Europe, and that taught me a hell of a lot about what it takes to actually run a business and grow it, the workload required from the owners, and the multifaceted skill set required. And I started as well, co-founded a food and catering business, and started seeing this opportunity in barbering, and that kind of came through a software app that I was selling at the time, and it gave a really good picture of the barber industry because I was just coming into contact with so many barbers and so many customers, and you just started seeing the shortfalls of the industry. And all the time I'm wondering, where's the Starbucks? Where's the McDonald's in this industry? There was none.
Oh yeah.
Well, we better build it then.
Interesting. And before the call, we also mentioned that you have a crowdfunding campaign which is on Crowdcube. Can you explain more about the campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are launching a crowdfunding campaign to essentially enable us to open a few more stores. We've currently got 5 stores, to open a couple more, reach, further increase our revenue run rate to a point where we can raise a very big Series A round.
Okay.
Now, our goal, and I'm not sure if all the listeners will be familiar with this, but you've got brands like Blank Street Coffee or Flash Coffee. These are physical brands that are taking on venture capital investment to rapidly scale. Now, we're backed by VCs ourselves, and we want to do similar such rounds, and this crowdfund enables us to reach that state. So it's a super exciting time for Cutbox as we hopefully go from 5 stores to 50 in 18, 24 months or so.
Interesting. Before the call, we discussed about my experience at Oyo Rooms, which was a marketplace, as well as at Hyper. But a Cutbox is not a marketplace. So, I was wondering, how did you, get investments from tech VCs? I'm a fan of Fuel Ventures. They were investors at CapDesk and Paddle and a few other high quality companies. What was the fundraising strategy for you to invite high tech investors to get into the seed round?
One of the things to be really focused about, and that ourselves and our investors believe in, is the customer experience and promoting that customer journey, and that being associated with the brand. Now, there are many types of business. In fact, that software business that I was working with when we first started is all trying to create a marketplace in the industry, but that doesn't actually solve all of the customer problems that people come across and create this trusted brand. So it's really selling them on that customer journey that you're going to deliver an above a massively improved customer experience on what is currently out there. And that is what enables you to accrue that kind of investment, as well as showing the market size for what's going on. We're very lucky because ultimately everybody needs their haircut. So it's, you've got 14 million men every month getting a haircut in the UK alone. And it's not something that just goes in a recession or anything. You need to get your haircut as part of daily life. So, and that's ultimately convincing our investors and even new hires, anyone coming aboard, that this is something that will be a part of everybody's daily life, just as a McDonald's or a Starbucks.
Yeah, no, I really like the thought process, and when it's back in India, I think my haircut would cost anywhere from £2 to £4, and I was shocked to see the pricing out here in the UK. But how do you look at pricing structure? Because when I went to your website, I think the pricing was very affordable, and I was quite intrigued that you were running 5 shops in I think a couple of them in London, a couple of them in Bristol. But how did you look at creating the pricing strategy which will make you break even, and how do you look at scaling it up from there?
Pricing is a super interesting topic. We could literally talk for the whole podcast about it. But in reality, when you're looking at pricing, you need to price in a way that people can afford the haircut. They might pay slightly a bit above average, so that it's not the same as, for example, a £10 to £15 cut that you would get in your local barber store. But then the service is improved. You've got a booking system. The barbers are trained. It's a professionalized environment. So that's one element of it. The other element is you also need to look at your competitors as well, and how these guys are pricing. So, and the options that a lot of customers have is they can go to their local, which is probably relatively cheap, but they've got to wait for a long time in the store. The customer experience isn't quite there. Or the other alternative, especially here in central London, is to go to a high-priced premium place where you get that experience. And those can be anywhere upwards of £35, £40 sort of price points, which prices a lot of people out. So what we see is a market for people who want convenient, affordable haircuts and a premium haircut experience, or at least some of those elements, for affordable prices.
Okay, got it. And do you only focus on men haircut, or is it women and kids are also something which you look at in the future?
Right now, our focus is on the men's grooming.
Okay.
And that's very important because this is a very fast-growing industry without any big players in it.
Yeah.
So it's set to be $80 billion by 2024. And men's attitude towards grooming, their own personal beauty, it's changing. They're increasing customer average spend. All of these various things contribute to a massively growing industry. We don't just see ourselves as doing haircuts. It's products, franchising, barber schools, all of these things tying into it. Now, we also offer haircuts to kids as well within our store, but we don't do women's, not yet, because that market is very saturated. But that isn't to say sometime down the line we wouldn't do it.
Oh, I see. Interesting. And I think the one of the most crucial pieces in the business would be the quality of haircuts and the barbers. How do you get to decide whom are you going to whom are you going to recruit? What's the interview process, and how do you train your barbers so that they when they cut, then somebody knows it's from the cut box barber style?
Yeah, brilliant. No, really good question. There's a few aspects to this. The first bit is on the recruitment side and how we're getting people on board. And it actually starts more with a character recruitment, so a character phone call. And this is really important that their character fits in with that of the store, that they uphold certain values, that they're hardworking, they're friendly, they're kind, they work as a team with the rest of the teams, because these teams operate in small units. You're talking units no bigger than 5 people, so everybody needs to get on with each other. And that's all part of creating a very positive and uplifting atmosphere in store, because if you've got happy barbers, then you're going to have happy customers. If you've got barbers who don't necessarily get on with each other, then it's going to rub off on the customers. That's the first thing. We, of course, do things like trade tests to check the certain service standards. You'll be actually surprised to know that there isn't actually a an accreditation or like a standardized qualification for cutting hair here in the UK. So what we've had to do is we've had to map out the trade test exactly what is required for a barber to cut at the level that we need them to cut. And then we assess them based on those criteria. Assessment doesn't stop there, and it's benefited by our technology. So our technology on the front end is the customer booking system. On the back end, we get a huge amount of data on barber utilization rates, their 2-month retention rate, all these various different things. And that enables us to identify what does a quality barber look like. For example, we see customer reviews coming in before they go to Google, so we can see all these various things, and then we can take action and coaching to get them better. Now, one of the final things there is the training piece. Now, while we do in-store training at the moment, one of our plans in the future post-Series A round is to build out a barbering school, which acts as a cutbox finishing academy and ensures that quality across our stores. And this will be a vital part of our growth strategy going forward.
Got it. Interesting. You talked about barbering school. Are there any accredited barbering schools? Because I presume a lot of people, when they graduate from school or college, they get into these schools. But are they accredited, or do you think that is something which is not done in the UK?
Yeah, there are several different types of accreditation within barbering schools, and there are barbering, like London School of Barbering is a very big and known school. I think it's the biggest one in the UK. Now, with that said, we want to bring people in and train them to cut and do a service in the way that Cutbox Quality Barber would do that. Okay. So that's part of the reason why we're looking at doing our own, and we've seen other brands abroad do a similar kind of thing too, to great effect.
Got it. And you started off with London. Was Westfield the first London store you had?
We actually we started with the Bristol stores, and it was and it was House of Fraser in Bristol, Cabot Circus. That was our first shop, and it was a great thing. It was actually, it was almost like an MVP barber store. You had it in the middle of the men's retail section just to see if this concept worked, and luckily it did, and then we managed to scale from there.
Interesting. And what made you choose Bristol? Because I worked in a marketplace where you're focusing on London and Bristol, but Bristol is a very interesting market. But what got you started there?
Bristol was super interesting because we were fortunate enough to be able to strike up a relationship with House of Fraser, and they have a great, fantastic store in Bristol, which was brilliant. And we looked at the city and we thought, okay, there's a lot of barbershops in Bristol. It's very competitive, but on the flip side, it's a student town. It's a young demographic, pretty affluent. There's people there. There's a lot of things going on. Great nightlife, things like this. These are all triggers for our customers to go and get haircuts. It's probably a really good place to start. So started out there, and it was great to begin there. Got our first few barbers in, and then got going.
Got it. And how were you able to get your first customers in once? Or did you leverage the brand of House of Fraser's in Bristol? And what was your strategy to get in your first few customers in London?
There was a bit of that. There was quite a few things going on, because we completed our fundraise in the middle of the pandemic back in 2020. Okay. So retail wasn't open. We closed our first round from SFC Capital December 2020, and our first store opened April 2021, and that was when retail opened. So the first big uplift from customers was actually just this pent-up demand to get a haircut. And I remember the first week for our store, we opened up our booking system, and we literally got 100 bookings across maybe just a few days. It was carnage when we first opened, and loads of customers coming in for their bookings, everything. That enabled us to capture a lot of people. One of the things we did do was we chose a price point that was very competitive in the area to begin with.
Right.
And that was we did that on purpose so that we could get customers coming in. And we also we were also relatively generous in terms of the salaries we were giving, compensation packages for our first barbers to make sure we got really good barbers in that area. And that enabled us to get a really strong foothold and build a reputation as a brand in Bristol to launch our second store there.
Okay, got it. And when do you get to decide that you should launch in a second city or a second market, or was it a a strategy to launch X number of barber shops every year? Well, what's the strategy behind?
So one of the key things when looking at where to launch a barber store is what makes a good barber store. How do you define that?
Okay.
We do a lot of analysis, a lot of data analysis, things like footfall, demographics, etc. in an area. Now, looking at Bristol, that's certainly a place we'll continue to expand in. But what helped us with London was that we were developing a lot of relationships with retailers and landowners, people like Westfield or the people in Victoria Station, such that we started getting these opportunities. And it was a matter of looking at how operationally we could run these stores, and then actually setting out deals with these people and getting our stores set up there. Now, when you're further expanding, you need to look very carefully geographically how you're going to do that, because there is an operational overhead of, if I were to open a store, if we were to open a store now in Edinburgh or something, it would be a challenge to manage that.
Yeah.
So there's an operational machine that you have to consider, but generally keeping it sort of the south of the country, Bristol, London, very easy to get to between both, is a good start.
Got it. And currently you have around 5 stores, and you're looking to expand to 100 more. Which cities would you focus on? Would it be in the UK, or are you looking to expand internationally?
UK first, major cities. We'll expand definitely further within London and the home counties and whatnot. Then further afield, we'll probably target the major cities to begin with, and then go from there.
Okay. Got it.
As another expansion mechanism, so we'll expand through our own stores, but we'll also look, after we reach a certain critical mass, to start franchising out our locations as well.
Okay.
It's a great means of career progression for our own barbers, as well as for any other barbers who want to start their own shop too. And these people are often really, really skilled, and they need the support in terms of the business side of things, which we can give, as well as these tech systems that we're constantly developing that help them run their stores.
Okay. Got it. And when you talk about tech systems, what in particular, makes it different from other barber shops? And that's one of, obviously you have data analysis, which is quite different from what other barber shops would have. But what are you doing different from others?
I'd say there are many features of what we're doing that is different, which I can go into, but I think the biggest difference is the mindset of the team and how we're approaching it, because constantly we are looking for various innovations, things that helps the store run better as a system. So I'll give you an example. Is we recently introduced subscriptions in our stores. This is something that I actually don't think is done by maybe a handful of barbers in the country. And it's been to absolutely brilliant effect. So we've launched it maybe about 5-6 weeks ago. We already sold it to about 10% of our client base. And that number is continuing to go up with a relatively low churn. And these are things that's always looking at the customer experience. How can we optimize this as best as possible on each aspect of that customer journey? Now, in terms of the back-end data stuff, that is very powerful, because that enables us to run the stores with fewer levels of management than you would otherwise need, which is super interesting. But we do have a few further plans on the customer side with the tech too over the coming months and years.
Got it. And you run a physical company. How could founders who run a physical business be strategic enough to build moats around their business? Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
That is an interesting question. So you're effectively asking how you build a sustainable advantage.
Yeah. I mean, can they build moats from day one? Can they? Yeah.
I think I think you have to really analyze the customer journey and what's important for the customer.
Okay.
Why are they getting what? If you start with it, because say for example, a lot of barber stores, the owner was a barber before. They may have known people who started a barber store and they just do it the way they've always known. But you have to challenge that by looking at starting at the fundamental. What is it that the customer wants? And then working from there. Now, with that said, you probably won't build a massive moat from day one.
Yeah.
And that's why a huge bit of our strategy is to move fast, which is why we've gone down the VC route. Otherwise, we'd have just made a barbershop, and then just started that and then opened another one and taken several years to go from there. But moving fast is super important because that gets the brand out there, because you need to be known as synonymous with whatever it is that you will do, at least in this world of what we do, and it's kind of with venture capital and whatnot, if you're really trying to dominate an industry.
Got it. And I quickly just wanted to understand what's the revenue numbers and how much time does it take for you to break even with each store?
So for each store, I mean, so our total revenue number is closing in on about $1 million revenue run rate at the moment, which is quite an important number for us.
Yeah.
But for each store, this is a really important question because we've been going through several optimizations of our locations.
Okay.
And we think for a standard barber store, your average revenue number per month should be about 25, 26K, and you should take about 3 months to break even.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And what that means is that you've got lower revenues and probably lower profit and EBITDA than a coffee chain, but you can open a hell of a lot of these things because there's just market everywhere for it.
Yeah.
It's a super interesting model.
Yeah. Interesting. And are the margins higher for the barber cuts and the products, or do you think it's would you know what's the revenue multiple for the products that you sell and the cuts you do?
The product should be higher.
Okay.
But the thing with the products is, to get it that high, you really need to invest a lot in terms of product development.
Okay. Got it.
And manufacturing. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Interesting. And this especially for those founders, listeners who have not got the product market fit. What's the single biggest mistake founders make while they're searching for a product market fit?
Interesting. I'll tell you a bit of a story with this. So I was involved in a project where we were effectively trying to bring a product to market.
Okay.
One of the biggest issues we had was we had this engineer's mindset where you're trying to perfect the product without taking it out to market as an MVP version and testing it out. And I think the biggest mistake you can make is by focusing too much on the product development and not getting anything to market soon enough. And that may be something as simple as saying, we can pre-sell something to do with our product. Like, we're pre-selling something to see if people will buy it. And if they buy it, then great. If they don't buy it, then we've also learned something.
Yeah.
So it's trying to find that essentially, which I think is really, really important.
Got it. And when it comes to product market fit, what's the most important elements of messaging
I think the most important philosophy behind messaging is that it's really simple and easily understandable. People need to know what you do and how that will benefit them at a glance, especially in a consumer product I'm talking about, especially. But I think in pretty much anything, it needs to be really clear what the value proposition is.
Oh, okay, got it. And especially, since you work in totally different markets right now, do you have different messaging for your customer personas in Bristol as well as in London, or do you have a constant messaging which resonates with both the audiences in both the cities?
We have generally constant messaging because the customer markets have similar types of behaviors.
I see.
With that said, it is sometimes a little bit nuanced depending on locations. For example, in our Westfield location, you've got customers who've got slightly longer dwell time, whereas somewhere like Victoria, they are in a rush. So those are some slight nuances that you have to get across to people. But yeah, it is generally similar customer behavior, which is why I really like businesses like Cutbox, because it's very simple business at the end of it, but all the complexity comes in the back end, like how it's being run and the efficiencies that you're driving there.
Okay, got it. Interesting. And I want to talk about talent acquisition, because you have not only barbers, but you also have operators who run the business. What are some of the biggest lessons that you learned when it comes to acquiring the best of talent across all the stores that you run in?
Central team operators, you mean? You're talking about like people running the shops? Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I'd say the biggest thing when acquiring that kind of talent is to not be afraid to hire people who are more senior early on. I think this is very important, because otherwise you end up being in a position where you have to hire twice, because in a business like this, it's changing all the time, increasing, growing. Because of that, the demands of people change. So if you get someone who's fine for March 2022 or whatever, or you get someone fine for February 2022, by December 2022, the business is completely different, and then it's a different beast. So and oftentimes it's difficult for people to go along with the ride. So I think the biggest lesson is to hire more senior people sooner.
Oh, interesting. Got it. And I just wanted to follow up on that. Like, would you hire inexperienced hustlers or experienced people when you're looking to scale up? Why I ask is that because a lot of founders, especially when it comes to pre-seed or seed, they don't have a lot of money to spend on a expensive senior hire. But would you advise them to hire somebody who's very young but who has got a lot of enthusiasm? Because especially when it comes to young hustlers, they have a lot of enthusiasm. They may not really understand experience. So what advice would you give to those founders who just raised pre-seed and they can't hire somebody who's very senior?
I would say it depends on the role for which they're hiring. If the role is very specific,
right,
a senior person is very good. And I understand when we say they don't have necessarily the money to hire this person.
Right.
But I also think that a more fluid view of money is really important. And what I mean by that, because I know that's a very abstract term, is that if you get on a super senior person and they make a massive difference to your top line, bottom line, then your ability to raise funding, it becomes almost easy. So they've paid for themselves, and you're not really going to run out of money because you're going to raise more funding into the business anyway.
Right.
Now, with that said, for generalist hires, and if it's a very general role, I like hustlers who have a lot of drive. A really good example of this actually is one of our barbers in Bristol, who's now the area manager there and has been promoted through the company. You can see he's got so much drive. He wants to move forward, and that's brilliant to see. And that's great. And that's part of what we want to do here in Cutbox.
Got it. And what have been some of your biggest mistakes when it comes to, hiring people?
Not hiring senior enough in specific roles. That's literally the biggest. I think that's the biggest error that you can make. And if you hire too junior, the issue that comes up is that they cost their cost plus the additional expense of your time, your co-founder's time, your team's time, because you're going to have to pick up work for them, because ultimately startup work needs to get done, so somebody's got to do it. And that's a really big issue. And I think it's very hard to go through hiring without making any mistakes. So I wouldn't berate anybody that does, and I wouldn't be harsh on myself as a founder or anyone else. I don't recommend they do that. But I do recommend that you identify that you've done that and act swiftly, and that might mean unfortunately letting the person go, but you've got to do it really quickly. It's very important to move fast on that.
Oh, interesting. And what advice would you have for 2023 graduates? Would you ask them to work in a startup or work in a bigger company?
You mean if they want to be a startup founder?
No. If they want to, work for some time and then start something, would you suggest them to, work in a bigger company and learn the ropes, or would you suggest them to, work in a startup?
No, I think they need to. I think you really need to work in a startup.
Okay.
And you need to have experience, get experience trying things and failing at things.
Okay.
I think that resilience is a really important character trait for people who do well in startups.
Got it. Interesting. And I quickly want to do the top 3. What's your favorite business book?
Oh, interesting. I would say it's Shoe Dog Night by Phil Knight. I really like that book because you really follow him through that journey.
Yeah.
And you see the successes and the failures, the pitfalls, and the level of determination and drive required to succeed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's one of my favorite books. I'm going to put that in the show notes. And if you could go back in time when you started Cutbox, what is the one thing you would have focused on or done anything differently?
I would have hired a very senior operator.
Okay. Interesting.
Straight away, yeah.
Got it. And what's your favorite online tool? For example, Gmail, Slack, Zoom.
I would say that my newest favorite online tool is ChatGPT because it always gives me things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's one of my favorite tools as well. And what's the best way people can reach out to you and know more about the crowdfunding campaign that you're running on? Is it on Crowdcube? Is it
on Crowdcube? Yeah, you can reach out to me on my LinkedIn, Osajie Oboh, or you can find us on Crowdcube under Cutbox. If you're on Crowdcube and search Cutbox, we'll be on there.
Okay, wonderful. We'll put that in the show notes. Well, thank you so much for taking on time and speaking to us. I really enjoyed my conversation with you.
Likewise, thank you very much. Pleasure to be on.